Undercover boss left a $2 tip on a $97 bill. He expected anger, judgment, or at least a fake smile. But the waitress? She picked up the small tip, looked at him, and smiled. Really smiled. Her eyes shimmered with tears, and her voice didn't crack with resentment, but with something softer. "This means more than you think," she said. And in that instant, the undercover boss sat frozen. His throat tightened. He wasn't sure if it was guilt, confusion, or the quiet ache of something broken inside him. Why did she look grateful? Why wasn't she upset? He glanced down at the crumpled $2 bill, then at her retreating figure, walking away with kindness that made no sense. But he didn't know it yet, that in that very moment, a much darker truth was unfolding in the back room, one that would shake him to his core and change everything he thought he knew about his restaurant. Javier Morales, age 52, is the founder and CEO of Soul and Fire, a beloved Southern-style restaurant chain. He's not your typical CEO. Fair-skinned, flannel shirt kind of guy, built his empire with grit and faith, starting from a beat-up food truck parked on the edge of town. He always believed in second chances, but now his second chances were being stolen. Anonymous messages kept flooding in. Good staff are quitting. Tips are going missing. Managers are pocketing money. Javier had to know the truth, so he put on an old hoodie, ripped jeans, and faded sneakers, and walked into his own restaurant in Clearwater, Mississippi, as just another customer. It was lunchtime, a slow Tuesday. The restaurant was half full, the air filled with the savory aroma of fried catfish and sweet cornbread. Javier sat alone at a booth in the back corner, slouched into his faded hoodie, ball cap pulled low. He scanned the room, not just for service, but for behavior, body language, tone. Was the energy warm? Was it authentic? Or just corporate hospitality gone cold? A waitress approached, mid-20s, hair tied back in a messy ponytail. Her name tag read Lila. She looked like she'd been standing for hours, but her eyes still tried to sparkle with kindness. "Welcome to Soul and Fire," she said, voice soft but cheerful. "First time here?" Javier gave her a warm, almost nostalgic smile. "Sort of," he replied. "I've heard good things." She led him to the best-lit table by the window, wiped it down again, even though it was spotless, and handed him a menu. "The fried catfish is fresh. Mac and cheese is creamy today. And if you're here for comfort food, I'd say don't skip the cornbread. It's the owner's original recipe." That hit Javier like a whisper from the past. His recipe, from his food truck days. The fact that she knew it, it touched him. He nodded, pretending to think it over. "Let's do all of it then. Add a peach cobbler and coffee too." "Coming right up," Lila smiled. "You won't regret it." She wasn't robotic. She didn't fake it. She cared. Every time she passed by, she checked his water without being asked, refilled his coffee, smiled even when another customer snapped fingers at her. She moved with the kind of grace only people with nothing to spare tend to have. After 40 minutes, Javier had devoured the entire meal. The bill came, $97. He reached into his wallet slowly, paused, and placed just 2 crumpled dollar bills under the receipt. His stomach churned with guilt. This felt wrong, but it was necessary. He stood up, ready to see the reaction. He expected the usual, a stiff smile, a quiet scoff, maybe a side eye and a whispered insult once he walked away. But Lila, she walked over, picked up the receipt and paused. Her eyes flicked to the $2. And then she smiled, genuinely. Eyes glistening, but not from anger. "Thank you, sir. This really helps." Javier blinked, caught off guard. "Even if it's just $2, and he asked, unsure if she misunderstood. Lila glanced around. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She leaned in, just enough for her truth to land, without being heard by others. "We only get to keep half our tips," she said. "The manager takes the rest. Always has. So this is mine, and I'm grateful." Javier's heart twisted. His voice softened. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying the story so far and want to see how Javier handles this shocking betrayal, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. Back to story. "Wait, they take half your tips?" She nodded, almost afraid to speak louder. "It's not official, He says it's to cover the register or split with kitchen, but none of it's written anywhere. We can't complain or we're off the schedule. Some of the others already quit. She looked away for a second, then back at him, tears now closer to falling. I've got a little boy at home. He's 4. Every dollar counts. Even Javier felt like the air had been knocked out of him. He nodded silently, couldn't speak. His fingers curled into fists beneath the table. Not just because of the money, but because this woman, this bright, hard-working soul, was surviving on scraps in the restaurant that bore his name. A restaurant meant to be a symbol of hope and second chances. He watched her walk away, smile still on her face, not knowing she had just dropped a match on the fuse that would soon explode everything wide open. Because what Lila didn't know was that the quiet man in the hoodie was about to uncover far more than just a stolen tip. He stood up and walked toward the back, not barging in, just close enough to listen. He leaned quietly against the wall near the kitchen door, the smells of spices and frying oil swirling around him. But all he focused on was voices, and then he saw him. Mark, late 30s, slick back hair, a cologne cloud following him like a shadow. His gold watch glinted with every smug gesture. He wasn't just managing, he was performing. That girl pulled in almost $300 in tips the last 2 weeks, Mark bragged, loud enough for half the kitchen to hear. Guess how much she got to keep? How much? Asked a cook, stirring a pot without looking up. Half. That's right, half, Mark smirked. The rest went right here. He tapped his chest and chuckled. Corporate policy, right? Javier's chest tightened. Seriously? The cook asked, glancing over his shoulder. Come on, man, Mark continued. She's a single mom. She ain't going anywhere. She needs this job. Always shows up early, always smiling. Poor thing thinks working hard will change her life. I'm actually doing her a favor, teaching her how the real world works. Javier's fists clenched. He had to dig his nails into his palms to stop himself from storming in. Every word felt like acid being poured on the values he built this company on. This wasn't just policy abuse, it was exploitation. It was cruelty dressed up as authority. He backed away quietly, returned to his table, and sat down, eyes unfocused, hands shaking. It wasn't the money, not really. It was the betrayal. The absolute disregard for the mission Soul and Fire was built on. He remembered the food truck days, the long nights, the line cooks who became family. He built Soul and Fire to be a second home, especially for people like Lila. And now, this man, this parasite, was using his name to drain them dry. But Javier wasn't going to fire him. That would be too easy. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. About a lesson that would echo far beyond just one restaurant. Mark had no idea what was coming. Before we dive into what happens next, if you're enjoying this story and want to uncover more hidden truths behind the scenes, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. It wasn't a grand staff meeting. There were no announcements, no warnings. It happened when no one expected it, right in the middle of the dinner rush. The restaurant was buzzing, orders flying in, plates clattering. The sweet smell of cornbread and smoked brisket filled the air. And then, Javier stood up from his table. Calmly, deliberately, he walked to the front counter. The servers kept moving until he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a weathered leather wallet. From it, he took out a card. He placed it on the counter. Founder, Soul and Fire. The room didn't fall silent instantly, but it rippled. First one gasp, then another. A cook peeked from the kitchen. A busboy dropped his towel. Lila froze. Her hands trembled around a tray of lemonade glasses. Her lips parted, but no words came out. And Mark? Mark stood by the soda fountain, mid-joke with another staff member. His smile vanished. His skin turned the color of raw dough. Javier looked around the room, slowly, eyes meeting each of his employees. I built Soul and Fire for people like me, he said, voice strong and steady. People who served tables, cleaned grease traps, laughed through tears on double shifts, hoping tomorrow would be better. He turned toward Lila. Today I came in as a customer, and I watched you work with more heart, more grace than I've seen in years. You were kind even when kindness wasn't returned. You stayed honest, even when others weren't. And that is what this place was built on. Lila blinked fast. Her voice cracked. Thank you, sir. Javier held up a hand, not to silence her, but to promise her something better was coming. Then his gaze cut to Mark, and the air shifted. You, Javier said, walking toward him, you used my company's name to steal. You took from single mothers. You lied to your team. And worst of all, you thought you'd never get caught. Mark stammered. Sir, I didn't mean to. It was never. Save it, Javier snapped. You knew exactly what you were doing. You laughed about it. You bragged about it. Everyone was watching now. A table of customers paused mid-bite. A dishwasher leaned out from the back. Then Javier delivered the sentence. Effective immediately, you are demoted. You will stay here on one condition, as the janitor of this very restaurant. For the next 5 years. Gasps, eyes widened. You'll clean every inch of the floor you walked over in comfort while stealing from the people who trusted you. And just so we're clear, your name will be sent to every Soul and Fire location in this country. If you try to transfer, apply, or lie your way back into management, they'll know who you are. Mark's face turned red, then pale, then red again. Staff whispered behind napkins. A couple of cooks nodded in silent approval. And Lila? She set down her tray and wiped a tear from her cheek. Not out of sadness, but relief, because someone had finally stood up for people like her. And Javier Morales, flannel shirt, fire in his eyes, meant every single word. Lila stood frozen, still wiping her eyes. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Javier stepped closer, his voice calm but full of purpose. Then just say yes, I'm promoting you to restaurant manager. The room exploded in cheers. A few of the servers clapped. One of the cooks let out a whistle. Lila gasped. Her hand covered her mouth as the tears came harder, this time from hope. But she wasn't finished. She took a deep breath, walked to the cleaning closet, and pulled out a mop. The staff fell silent, eyes following her every step. She turned to Mark, now stripped of his pride, his status, and his lies, and held the mop out to him. It's your turn now, she said softly. Mark took it with shaking hands, his face red with shame. No applause, no sympathy, just the sound of a broken man realizing the floor beneath him was now all he had. From that day forward, Soul and Fire enforced full transparency on tipping. Every receipt showed where the money went. Every manager was held accountable. A new sign was hung in every break room. If you steal someone's gratitude, you'll work to earn it back. And Javier? He still walks into random locations, dressed like just another customer, leaves a big bill, and sometimes a small tip. Because character isn't built by what you earn. It's revealed by how you treat others when you think no one's watching.